Know that the universe is mathematically, geometrically, and harmonically precise, and that your consciousness is the creator of your experience. Once you understand those topics, you become so powerful. And the research that I'm doing here and others like me are proving beyond a shadow of a doubt, in my view, that we live in this consciousness driven, highly organized, precise universe. So we are powerful.
Welcome to Living in 5D with your host, Peter D.
Welcome to Living in 5D. Our guest today is Charlie Ziese. And man, are we in for some mind-blowing knowledge. Charlie, so pleased to welcome you here. You've been a friend of mine for several years since we met in a class we took together. And it's just amazing. You've created the Pyramid Science Foundation. You're probably the leading expert in the world on phi-scale pyramids, or commonly known as the Russian pyramid. And today we're going to talk about how that really has affected our entire life. This phi-scaling and these Russian pyramids shape has affected our entire life, and how we can use that to move into 5D. Welcome, Charlie.
Well, thanks for having me, Peter. I really appreciate the chance to be on with you and talk to your audience today.
Yeah, it's super. So do you want to just add anything to your background or introduction before we dive in?
Well, I'll just give people a brief history. I was a Wall Streeter, and I don't look like it today with the ponytail in the back. But anyway, I guess a number of years ago, either they fired me or I fired them, because it was time to end that phase of my life and to do something that was more valuable to mankind. So
you're happier, and everybody in the world is happier too.
Yeah, every aspect of my life has improved as a result. But about 7 years ago, I happened to be watching Gaia TV, and researcher that a lot of your audience may know, David Wilcock, had a series on there, and he did a number of episodes on the Russian pyramids. And I knew nothing about this topic at all, except that the science was so amazing that I knew that this was something I wanted to sink my teeth into, because I was a skeptic at the time. I didn't understand how pyramid energies worked, and there was very little information out there as to how it actually did work. So I set about trying to figure that out. It's taken me into a journey that has been brings joy to me every single moment of my life, because I'm uncovering all of these secrets of how the universe is organized, how free energy comes about, how health can come about. And I see sacred geometry in 3 dimensions, something easily in 3 dimensions, which is something that I guess most people have a little bit of a trouble finding out, because there's very, very little research out there that shows that people, at least in our culture, have known about this. Now, we're going to talk about that today, because people in the past, and I'm going to be showing this in architecture, knew about this, and it's cooked right into the architecture that we're going to talk about today of the Gothic cathedrals. So
I'm
fascinating.
excited to get there. And I think for me, what's really beautiful about your journey is you were interested, and then you went from knowing nothing to being expert in a fairly brief period of time, which is just really a sign of when you focus and allow what can become. And we'll talk about that more, and how that affects you in 5D living. Today, we're going to be focusing on your newest research on Gothic cathedrals, and how it's been in religious architecture in our Western culture for a long time, the phi-scale shape. If you're interested in a more general discussion, as well as a transmission for bringing this into your life and being able to access these energies no matter where you are, please check the links below. There's a Gnostic TV episode that Charlie has graciously been a guest on, Becoming Awesome TV. And you can just bring this pyramid energy into your life, learn more about the basics of it, and particularly receive that transmission. That's all in the links below. But today we're going to look at some brand new research. And Charlie, why don't you just take it off?
Okay, I'll do that. What just by way of background, up until the point that I started doing this research, I really had not seen, and I don't think there's anything out there that correlated 3D scaling, so to speak, with the golden ratio, and looking at that in the context of ancient architecture. But about 3 years ago, I started noticing this particular geometry of the pyramids that I make in architecture around the world, and that includes the Buddhist temples, the Gothic cathedrals, church steeples, lots of other architecture, castles, for example. So there are temples and so forth. So obelisks. So I knew that there was this one particular geometry, and one of those places where I found it was in the Gothic cathedrals. But I knew that there were a number of other geometric angles in the Gothic cathedrals, and I'd always said that I was going to go back and research that at some point. So I happened to be scheduled to be on a program a couple of months, about 6 weeks ago, and I had promised to, look at that by the time I came back on. So I quickly decided to do that. And this is going to become a little bit of a commercial, Peter, actually, for the work that you do, because I have to tell you that I have put all of this knowledge together in 6 weeks' time, and I did it through the guidance, really, of the universe that I received by using a combination of my pyramid with the techniques that I've learned from your classes in Becoming Awesome. So it's really a great testimonial, both to the technology of the pyramids, as well as the ability to bring all of the elements in the universe together to conspire to collectively create and to bring this knowledge back from the past and reintroduce it back into contemporary society. So with that as background.
Thank you. Let me just say that what you're talking about is taking a way of living, taking a certain set of knowledge, and then applying it so that your everyday life transforms. And that's what I do as an ascension coach. And those are the kinds of classes that are offered. You can find more information about that stuff below. But I think most importantly, Charlie, your living testimony to what it's like for a person transitioning from an old realm of 3D living into 5D living, and just how knowledge and information comes to you and how life gets easier and more exciting. So let's find out about this excitement.
That's right. So, and that's exactly what's going on. So anyway, I'm going to show you this information. This is just a kind of a cover page for a very large presentation that I've done on this, but we're going to do some summary slides today to show you how all of this works. This really took inspiration. There's over 120, I think there's about 123 Gothic cathedrals as defined by Wikipedia. I'm sure there are other lists, but that's what I worked off of, as well as a list of the 50 tallest churches in the world. And between the two, I came up with a really great list of cathedral steeples that I could look at. And I just want to, I'm going to kind of shortcut this because people don't really care about how much inspiration or perspiration was involved here. But I'm just going to show you that there are 6 different geometries that show up in these steeples. And you can see over on the left, we have a very flat steeple, and each one of these gets steeper and steeper as we go on. Now, I'm going to give some hints early on because I don't want to keep people in suspense. But the steeple that I was most familiar with is the third from the left. And this one that I'm pointing to with my cursor, that has the geometry of the Russian pyramid in it and is what I call a 3D phi scaling pyramid geometry. Now, the one on the left is actually, that's the geometry of the Great Giza Pyramid. So with that as background, I didn't know what these other four geometries were, but I just want to show you, this is what the universe told me. And it was so simple once I got this download that, I'm almost embarrassed to say it was much of an effort once, this information was revealed to me. So prior researchers had determined that for a Giza pyramid, again in Egypt, with a base length of 2, and we have to conform one piece of this to make everything else relate to it. So with a base length of 2, if you look at the diagram, a pyramid is really nothing more than, at least when you slice, kind of look at it as a two-dimensional slice, it can be looked at as two right triangles that butt up against each other. And so if you could visualize seeing another right triangle to the left of the one that's shown there, then you'd have the geometry of an entire pyramid. In that case, the base would be 2, but if we look at just one side of it like a triangle, and that's where we all can relate to from our geometry class, then we can know that the hypotenuse of a right triangle you can get by deriving a squared plus b squared, those two sides, the base and the height, equals c squared, or the hypotenuse. Well, in pyramid language, that's called the slant height. But anyway, we know that slant height for a total base of 2, or in this triangle example, a base of 1, that the slant height or hypotenuse of that is phi. Well, I knew also that the Russian pyramids, using that same analogy, that the hypotenuse or slant height was phi cubed. So since I knew to go back, I knew there was one missing in the middle, and there were 3 more that were steeper. I just came up with the idea, or it was given to me, to be honest, that would the other steeple geometries be simply exponential powers of phi found in the hypotenuse? So that's what I did. So I came up with this. I'm a scientist by background, and when I was in college, so I always like to try to use a scientific method. So I took the hypothesis, I made the hypothesis that the geometries of the Gothic cathedral steeples are related by exponential powers of phi, or the golden ratio, contained in the hypotenuse or slant height of each of these steeples. And so how was I going to go about testing that? Well, you can, once you know the triangle geometry, you can take that and develop all of the appropriate angles and so forth that you'd need. Well, the easiest one for me to measure is what's called the apex angle, and we'll show you that in a minute. But what I did was to determine the apex angles associated with each of these 6 power phi geometries. And then I used a screen protractor to measure those angles to see if they fit. And I did that, as I said, with every steeple that I could find in all of the 123 Gothic cathedrals. And I went on and expanded that just a bit to include at least the major steeples in the 50 tallest churches in the world, all as defined by Wikipedia. So not going to go through numbers and math today, but you see what's listed here as are the 6 apex angles that are associated with these 6 powers of phi geometries that I had assumed in my hypothesis. And sure enough, just to show you in summary, it turned out perfectly. First time, no problem. So, here's the Giza pyramid geometry. This is what I'm calling the phi squared geometry. Here's the phi cubed geometry. This is the Russian pyramid geometry that I work with. And then we found phi to the fourth, phi to the fifth, and phi to the sixth. So these aren't flukes. I did this, as I say, for every steeple in all of these, and that came out to something like 500 steeples that I looked at. Now, a lot of cathedrals have identical steeples, so I'm not counting, identical ones in that list. I'm talking about unique steeples within, this group, and every single one of them conform to one of those 6 powers of phi geometry. So I've asked Peter, and he's done that. When you after you see this video, we're going to go through a few examples today just to show you a few, but I've got all of this out there. It's open source. I want the world to know about this. And so there's a link to a slide, Google Slides presentation that I have out in the public domain. So you can go look at all of this at your leisure. But I wanted to show you a couple of examples just to show you how this all works. Now, this is the Rouen Cathedral in France, and you can see we've got a couple of different geometries here that we can study. And sure enough, when I measure these, we're going to find this first one has an apex angle of 16.778. That relates to phi to the fourth power. Another one has 10.346, which relates to phi to the fifth. And here's another one at 6.19 degrees. It relates to phi to the sixth power. And just picked a couple more. These are all parts of the 123 Gothic cathedrals that are defined by Wikipedia. This is the St. Mary Redcliffe Church in England. And the big cathedral, our steeple, is done with a geometry of phi to the fifth, and the minor steeples underneath it have phi to the third, which is the Russian. And then just another example, here's a St. Mary's Church in Gdansk, Poland. And you see it has lots of tall, thin steeples, and those steeples correlate to the phi to the fifth geometries. Here's some more of the smaller steeples. One has a phi squared geometry, and another one has the phi to the fifth. So finally, we're going to look at the Ulm Cathedral in Germany. This is actually the tallest church in the world. And if you notice, there's a big steeple up on top. Then there are 2 smaller ones on in the back of the church. And I measured those. The big one is here on the right side. It's the phi to the fourth geometry. The other 2 smaller ones are phi to the fourth that were in the back. And then there was yet a smaller steeple I was able to measure, which has the phi to the sixth. So basically, all of these cathedrals have steeples have these 6 powers of phi as their geometric angle. Now, we'll talk about why this is important in a minute, but I wanted to show you how this relates to the ancient practice of drawing these sacred geometry figures. Now, I don't know really how to do this. George Leoniak, I took one of his classes, and Peter, unlike I'm not saying this is because George is a bad teacher, but I picked up on your stuff faster than this. Is just not in my wheelhouse, but George is just amazing at this stuff. So I sent him these results several weeks ago, and he drew this diagram, and I hope that it can help people to see the profound knowledge that these architects of these cathedrals had about how circles and squares and triangles, but the golden ratio is so important in the creative process in our universe. So what he did here, he just took a circle, the outside circle, and he drew the Giza pyramid inside of it. Now, from that point, he started drawing successive, what are called golden ratio circles. So what that means is that whatever number he used as the diameter of the outside circle, he divided that by the golden ratio, or 1.61803398 dot dot dot, to come up with the diameter of the second one, and he continued to use that moving forward. Well, sure enough, when you do that and you draw these cathedral steeples in 2 dimensions, you come up with the same geometric angles, of course, that we saw in the steeples themselves. So this is a fascinating drawing in a way, because although it's 2-dimensional, you could do this in 3 dimensions and make not just the 2-line stick drawing, but you could make the 4-sided pyramid or cathedral steeple by making this a 3-dimensional drawing. So in that case, the golden ratio circles become spheres. And what happens? Those spheres will create, if you can visualize this, if you can pretend for a moment now that those circles are now spheres, what we've got is a stacked series of spheres which create this very 76-345 geometry, which seems to show up everywhere in the world of scaling. So anyway, again, to point out, this hasn't been known to us since we lost that information. And I want to go over some of the implications of why that could have happened, and certainly the things that we're going to be looking at next. But the builders, obviously, of these ancient cathedrals had a very sophisticated understanding of sacred geometry and the golden ratio, and they used the exponential scaling powers of phi to build all of the Gothic cathedral steeples. Yet, this knowledge has been lost since their original construction, which only ended about 500 years ago. Now, people in about the 60s or 70s figured out the sacred geometry of the Great Pyramid in Giza. But like I say, until I started doing this research, I don't think anyone has looked at sacred geometry, and specifically these scaling ratios of the golden ratio, or know anything about the sophistication that shows up in these Gothic cathedrals. So this is all new information. They had it 500 years ago, and we don't have it now. So that brings into question the very validity of our historical narrative. And it certainly motivates me and lots of researchers who discuss alternative history to research the reasons, events, and the responsible parties that led us to lose this knowledge. So, those on those levels, that's a whole separate, set of rabbit holes to go down. Why did this happen? Why does the church, all of the churches, not just the Catholic Church, but the other, Protestant denominations, none of them have any information that I've just revealed today, and don't seem terribly interested in finding out. And maybe that's because the knowledge was lost so long ago that they have no way of having a perspective as to why it might be relevant. But it is relevant, and we can see it now. So I'm hoping that researchers into alternative history, will now take this and start to explore it. But more importantly than that, my research has been into this phi cube geometry, but there's other information from Russia that indicates that the research of Anatoly Akimov specifically, that any cone or pyramid that contains the golden ratio can act as a passive torsion generator, which means free energy generator. And of course, I've discussed, Peter, before that information, that article has been suppressed when I went to try to find it from the Library of Congress. They said they had it, and then they pretended like they lost it. So I had to go to London to get it. So We've got that kind of stuff in there. We also know that many of these steeples contain what's called antiquitech. It can be fractal antennas or capacitors. The churches themselves have these massive pipe organs in them. This is all antiquitech that was used, at least is theorized to have been used for healing and for free energy generation. So we also know from the Russian pyramid research that the specific phi cube geometry that we found in these steeples does produce free energy and tremendous health benefits. So we've got all of this information, which is starting to tell us that perhaps these cathedrals weren't really initially cathedrals, but they could have been either healing centers or power plants in the past. So much to go over here. And then finally, I want to just mention, because this is the most timely information, if we know that phi will scale in one dimension and phi squared scales in two and phi cubed scales in three dimensions, well, what do phi to the fourth and fifth and sixth? Do they scale to some higher dimensions? Well, that turns out to be the next step that we're going to be looking at in our research. George Leoniak, who drew the diagram earlier, I didn't know this until yesterday, had been working on this very topic. And he's about 2 weeks away from putting together some slides and drawings that are going to link all of these hyperdimensional forms up to the 10th dimension, he says, with these very geometric angles and forms that we are finding in the Gothic cathedrals. So I think this is just going to be fascinating research. Can't wait to see it. And love to come back once I know how it all is going to relate. But in addition to those kinds of analyses, I've already found so many new rabbit holes that it's not, we don't have time to talk about today, but that show me that there was even over and above what we've seen, even more sophistication in their knowledge. And actually, some of these new rabbit holes intimate that they knew about hyperdimensional geometry as well. So this is going to be it's a whole new world. And I want to get this information out to all of the people who are interested in sacred geometry, because this is an area of research, like I say, that I literally, that this information has come to me. Now it's out I want to get it out to the world so people can start to look at it from their own unique perspectives and find applications of this knowledge in the areas of expertise that they have. So anyway, it's fascinating research. If you're interested we make, this is what I do. I make meditation pyramids based on one of these geometries, which is the phi cubed. And, feel free to go to stargatepyramids.com and use the code cathedral10 for 10% off of your purchase. So I'll leave it at that, Peter, but that's a whole new world of fascinating research to keep me busy, at least for the rest of this incarnation on this planet.
Thanks so much, Charlie. I'm so glad you're sharing this brand new cutting edge knowledge right here. Thank you for that. Just to summarize a couple of key things, Charlie's book, 76.345, which is the phi scale, is fabulous. It's a picture book. There's explanation, of course, but you can see this throughout all forms of architecture, nature, in the cosmos. It's just fantastic. So check that book out. Pyramidscience.org is the website to go to.
Pyramidsciencefoundation.org.
Pyramidsciencefoundation.org. Right. And so to get more information. And then if you actually want to receive a transmission where you can actually start to embody all this and experience more of that energy in your life, check the link on the Gnostic TV show below. Wow. So Charlie, tell me, you're starting to say there's more to research as far as Antiquitech. There's more to research as far as free energy and health. Tell me what you know already as far as practical applications. What have you seen people doing with this kind of knowledge?
Well, I mean, I know just from the research that we've done on the phi cube geometry that it provides a coherent energy field. And that seems to be the key to producing free energy and health. So, we've done all sorts of research which validates the research that was done in Russia on health. I have something in the background. I'm looking for. I have a pyramid of the scale and certainly the correct same geometry that I can use for some free energy experiments. So I'm looking for somebody with the mechanical or electrical engineering background to demonstrate that. So we're doing all of those sorts of things. But the practical, this is, and I think for people who are just listening to this, who really aren't that interested in the science and so forth. But what I will tell you is that all of this research and the research of many other people, I'll mention, for example, for those of you who know David Serena, I was on with him on just a couple of days ago when I was presenting this information, and he demonstrated that this same phi cubed geometry shows up in the orbits of the planets. And so this is, I mean, you just don't know where all of this is going to go. But practical stuff, when you see all of these things correlating, whether it's in the universe, structure of the universe, and then you see it in architecture, in technology, you know that we live in a universe that is precise and that could not have occurred as an accident, as we are attempted to be told by the current fad of cosmology, which I believe is a fad, which is the Big Bang Theory.
I'm blessed with one of your pyramids in my backyard, a meditation period. So it's just a passive generator. But when I go out and sit in it and meditate in it, and light language has been coming to me automatic when I sit in it now. So it's really quite a boost. So it's just a little simple thing that you can just have in your home to make your life more 5D, or you can use it actively by meditating in it. Or what you're going to be exploring is how to get the energy, how to actually translate it into a power source. I can't wait to see how that unfolds for humanity.
Right. Well, some of my other research, Peter, I really hadn't planned on doing the steeple research right now. As I mentioned, it's just because I was going to be on this program about 6 weeks ago that I took it back up. But speaking of free energy and so forth, I have a documentary that I want to put together. I've got it all, all the research done on the whole field of fluid dynamics. And so fluid dynamics, once you kind of see all these results, it's in all the nose cones of the rockets and the spaceships and the airplanes and the missiles and the bullets, and it's in race cars. It's everywhere. So it minimizes the drag in a fluid dynamics context. Well, if it's the perfect way to kind of cut through the ether, don't you think it would, looking at it from the other side, it would be the perfect way to implode the ether? Of course it is. So it all kind of comes together once you understand what you're saying.
Metaphorically, it's the perfect way to break through into more realms and more knowledge.
And
if you want to go with the metaphor.
Realms. That's right. So now,
so while we're at that, Charlie, I just have to tell you, I was listening to your presentation, wrapped, and you're a math geek, so I was really into that. But I'm a word geek, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, at one point, you used hypotenuse and hypothesis in the same sentence, and I was just totally jamming on it.
Oh, well, yeah. I hadn't thought maybe they come from a common etymology. Who knows? But hypo is there. Isn't it? So,
Anyway, I just had to throw that in because for the word geeks out there, it was really fun, not just the math
oh, yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And what I think I want everyone to understand is literally I'm being guided to look at this. So what I bring to all of these things is the guidance that I get, and then I can observe this in nature, and so I'm an observer almost and a listener. But there are people
Your guidance has become stronger or more clear since you've been using the pyramids in your life. In other words, is it kind of like a multiplying effect where it's just like a feedback loop? You get a little guidance and then you start to apply that and you get more guidance coming to you. Do you think your pyramid geometry has helped you actually receiving from spirit?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind about it. As soon as it took a lot of perspiration to figure out the geometry precisely the first time. But once I got that, and again, I use the pyramid, but I also am using your techniques, and I really can't overstate that in combination. I just put it out to my soul group, to all of my ancestors, like you teach us in class, and the answers come. That's it. And I know before I ask that the answer will be forthcoming. I just have to
Wow. That's such a nice connection
and it's there.
To know that you and spirit are that much in sync. You're that much in one with your spirit that you know this information is yours to receive. Oh man, I hope everybody listening to this takes that to heart, that's where we're getting to in this 5D living, is knowing that we're connected, and information comes to us, and then power and life and happiness and joy, all that follows. Yeah, it warms my heart to hear you say that. And thank you for saying that. I've been blessed with being able to share some of these techniques. And well, so if you're interested, folks, check out the links below. But let's just go back to every day, Charlie. When you're doing your life, how would you compare? Because we talked about this a little bit earlier before we started recording. How would you compare your life today to your life 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago? How has this kind of 5D living changed you?
Well, I mean, it's literally night and day. I almost perceive like my life started around 10 years ago. And, I don't mind saying it. I mean, when I left Wall Street, I was kind of a wreck. And, I had to do something to kind of get myself oriented again. And I started meditating. Then I found David Wilcock, found these pyramids, and everything has just changed. It's like my life up until about 10 years ago it's almost like another lifetime. It's not like I've closed it and I don't want to go visit the past, but it's just not relevant to me. I'm a new person. I'm a different person because my energy and my has evolved, and I'm thinking about the good of mankind first and foremost now. I'm not thinking about making money, and so I'm just a totally different person. Every day is a joy. I never work in the classic sense anymore. Because everything I do is a joy to do. So
it's beautiful to hear. And so let's talk about money for a second, because you can make a donation to the Pyramid Science Foundation through Give, Send, Go, which is a beautiful thing, to help fund some of these research projects. Or if you are a researcher and you have access, like you were looking for some person with electrical expertise who understands this, you can work with. Contact Charlie. He's very accessible. You're a great guy. That's one of the reasons I really enjoy our friendship, is I can reach out and talk to you. So this is open for people who want to get involved.
Yeah. And we want people. I need people. And I know that the right people are going to come to help us. Just as I said about George the other day, I mean, he wasn't on this show on Saturday, but he had picked up somewhere or another, and maybe it was through my intention. I wanted to get these things done, and sure enough, he shows up and he's on it and got it. So I know that the perfect person to help us with these free energy demonstration projects is going to show up, and they'll show up at the right time. So if any of you feel moved along those lines, if you want to help us in any way, if you're interested in being subjects for research projects and the like, one of the things I'm going to do now, Peter, is to build one of these pyramids in this phi to the fourth geometry. I'm going to wait until I see George's research, but I believe that that's the geometry that's going to be connected to the tesseract. And so it's also one that I can still build and have people sit inside of it. Once you get them really skinny like that, I can't do that. So
unless they're 100 feet tall.
Yeah, well, exactly. And nobody's got room for that. But I want to get some people who might be interested to experiment with, with a steeper geometry, see if they have any distortions in time, if time is the fourth dimension, or any other effects. But
just sign me up for that project for sure.
All right. Well,
maybe,
that's cool.
Maybe those of you listening, we can start a little group, a little chat group, and do it and report on that. But this looks like the future is just getting so incredible. We're moving into the 5D world, and this is physical, tangible aspects of it, not just all this mental woo-woo stuff, which is fun, but this is exciting because it's tangible toys you can play with. So, Charlie, let's wrap this up. Do you have anything you'd like to say to people on our way out?
Well, to get back to the practical everyday applications, know that the universe is mathematically, geometrically, and harmonically precise, and that your consciousness is the creator of your experience. Once you understand those topics, you become so powerful. And the research that I'm doing here and others like me are proving beyond a shadow of a doubt, in my view, that we live in this consciousness-driven, highly organized, precise universe. So we are powerful. Know your power.
Interesting what you're saying, that you are the creator of your experience. We knew, obviously, people knew they were powerful. People knew how to do phi scaling and create geometry to build structures. We see the physical evidence of this all over the world. They built these, and for some reason, it's gone. In my research, I started studying rhetoric, and Protagoras was one of the first rhetoricians I fell in love with. He's been mistranslated, but what he originally said was man, pardon the gender specific, man is the master of experience. And that was so powerful that he said that. They killed him and burned all his books. Only 5 fragments exist. And so this is part of that suppression that's been going on for a very long time. And I think what you just said, Charlie, is so beautiful. You are powerful. You are source incarnate. It's mathematically built into you. And some of these techniques that you're unveiling in your research are ways we can really magnify that power. But the biggest part is you. That's what's it. So I'm happy to share that message with everybody today.
Great. Well, and those are the parting messages that I want to get across. Know your power. All of this research, if we don't do anything else with it, it shows us that we knew this in the past. We are infinitely powerful beings by virtue of our consciousness.
Thank you so much. My guest today, Charlie Ziese, founder of the Pyramid Science Foundation. You can learn more at pyramidscience.org. Stay blessed, everybody. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.